Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode and new season of the Red Web.
It's the season premiere, guys.
Yay! Today, Miss Anastacia is going to take control for a very special celebrating Black heroes episode.
Right. They let me have the floor today.
Yay! And it's hopefully the first of many where we do that.
Yes.
And would you like to introduce our very special guest today?
All right. For this day in the Black congregation, I am here with Trinity and with Bradley, who are two very cool cosplayers that I've met coming back into the scene. We're gonna start with,
and they're also members of our volunteer group here in Texas too.
Yes, for CASA.
Yeah, CASA and other children's events. So
yeah,
they're all around wonderful people, and we're blessed to have you here today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's like so. You guys want to introduce yourselves? Any extra plugs or views we want to get started with?
No. Jump on in.
Yeah, we can jump on in.
Yeah, it's like, let's see. We'll start with Trinity. Go ahead and introduce yourself. What it is you do. Anything you want the audience to know to get us started.
I'm Trinity. I'm known in Austin as Pretty Kraken. I've been doing cosplay out here in Austin for about 6 years. Huge nerd. I'm a software engineer by trade. It's my day job. I think that's pretty much what I do.
Tell us your experience, your geekdom. What your characters you like and what kind of stuff you do?
So I usually gravitate towards Storm just because she's more of a recognizable character for kids, and it's easy to work with kids when you're a recognizable character. They're not afraid of you. They come to you. It gives them a sense of happiness. And also when they see a face that looks like theirs and they can see a superhero that they've seen, in books, magazines, comics, on TV, and they see that it's real and they can touch you and feel you, it makes them really, really happy. So I gravitate towards Storm, more or less. But I started out, when I was 5 years old, I thought I was Wonder Woman. I have this itsy-bitsy scar on my head. I thought I could fly. And for like a whole, maybe 6 seconds, I was airborne. I got on the dining table and I jumped off into the air, hit the coffee table, and my mom was pregnant with my little sister. She swore she was going to go into labor because there was so much blood, and I was crying and there was blood and stuff. I was like, Mama, I flew. I was flying. I'm Wonder Woman. And ever since that day, I've been Wonder Woman. I've rocked the Wonder Woman costume. I've got Wonder Woman tattoos on me. And I've always felt that part of me is Wonder Woman. There's nothing that I couldn't do. And
Yeah. First time I met you was at Pride Parade, and you were Storm. And I remember that because I had my little cosplay magic kit, and we safety pinned the Pride flag to you for your cape. It was really.
Oh.
It's a while. It's been a long while.
It's been a long time.
And Bradley.
Yeah, Brad. Okay. Then yeah, you introduce yourself. What cosplays are you known for? How long have you been in the business? Give us the details. I want to know. The business.
Yeah, so I'm Bradley. My cosplay name is actually my name. It's just Bradley Spears. My handles in video games and streaming is the Black Speed, as in like speed racer, but I'm black and I like Speed Racer, so I'm the Black Speed. I've actually not been cosplaying for that long. I've actually been cosplaying just a couple of years, and I'm very, very, very new to this. But I'm one of those people that when I sink my teeth into something, I just kind of run with it. So like there's about 10 or 11 different cosplays that I do, but the main one that everyone likes and will never let me not do is Frozone, and that's just the one that's just the one that I get asked to do. That's the one when I guest panels they want me to dress as, and it's interesting being Frozone because I like kind of a similar story with her Wonder Woman story. it's fun to be Frozone because it allows me to be very obnoxious and it allows me to be very funny. And I'm somebody that is very blunt. I'm very on the nose. I'm very forward. I don't really have a filter. I'll just say what I want. If you don't like it, then I'll just say it to somebody else. Like, like that's just who I am.
I think that's one of the things we connected on when we first met.
Yeah. I was like, you appreciated. One of the things you said was you appreciated how forward I was, and I didn't mince words, and you thought it was refreshing. And I went, I think it's refreshing too. Thank you, brother. And man, we have the same name, so I thought that was great. But I really much enjoy being characters like that. I enjoy being able to resonate with not just my childlike side, but also my adult side. I think more adults like that I'm Frozone more than kids do, because kids, it's easy to make a kid happy. I can be Black Panther, I can be Frozone, I can be whoever, and they're excited just because it's something that they saw on TV. But adults, it's like they have to gravitate towards it. There has to be some sense of relatability for an adult to enjoy it. And so many people see themselves in Frozone, and they see how funny he is, and they see how new he was, and it was different seeing a character so important as Frozone, and to hear Samuel L. Jackson's voice. That was so unheard of in a Pixar movie, to see the Pulp Fiction guy in a Disney film. So it was just, like, that's what made me want to be. I was like, oh, this guy's awesome. Like, he's so loud and he's so normal. He's like, he reminds me of my dad. I was like, this is great. And so I think that I share that with Trinity. It's just like I have this innate need to be able to relate to these characters that make me think of my own actual life. And Frozone was, without a doubt, no question. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be this guy. Like, I'll wear this tight spandex. I don't care. Like, so that's what I do. That's, I'm a video game Disney cosplayer. That's what I've been doing for a couple of years now.
All right. It's like, and yeah, Frozone's a funny one to talk about with people because it's like thinking back to it, because I have parents who literally, their favorite character is Frozone from The Incredibles. And it's like, I remember I geeked out the first time I saw you, and I think it's just, it was a vintage story where they just inserted Black characters in there, and it was no big deal. And we were like, yeah, this is one of the superheroes, and he's a good superhero.
Yep.
And we were just like, oh my God, this is great. And we just, yeah, it's one of those, I feel that, because it's like kids seem excited when they talk about it, but it always seems to be like older adults who like gravitate towards them, and I love it.
Yeah. It's always nice when you can be a superhero that's like not a defined archetype, like somebody who stands out. He's not a stereotype. He's not an archetype. He doesn't fit a mold. He was just this random guy who was Mr. Incredible's best friend, and that's all he was. He was just his best friend, but he was a really important character, and I thought that was pretty crucial.
Right. It's like, so yeah, you guys are great. It gravitates into my second question, which I divided it up into two because it's two distinct things for a lot of people. I guess we'll keep in the order. Trinity, you can go first. What was your first superhero, period? And then what was your first like Black superhero?
My first superhero was Wonder Woman. She was who I saw. I grew up in the Wonder Woman, $6 million man, that era. So Wonder Woman was who I thought was the best thing that ever happened. She was a woman, she was powerful, she could do all things, and that's who I thought all women should be. And I grew up thinking that. And then as time passed, the first Black superhero that I encountered in comic books was Black Panther, and then Storm. And then there was kind of like a lull for a little bit, and I think probably that was it for a while for me. For Black superhero, that was it for a while.
It's like, yeah, I feel that. Brad, what about you?
So I'm gonna show, like, even though I'm young, I'm gonna show my eclectic side a bit. So I want to say my first just superhero period that I was introduced to, I would definitely be Batman. Like, he was always my guy. Here's this dude that's just insanely smart, and he's big. Like, I've always been big on tech, And finally, I had a superhero that was big on tech. It wasn't about having laser eyes and could fly. He just built what he wanted. You know, butler. I was like, this is awesome. I want a butler. Like, you know, so I thought this was cool. So, you know, and then his butler's cool too. I was like, this is great. So Batman was definitely like Batman got me into comic books. Now, my first black superhero, however, was Blank Man. Here's the thing about Blank Man. Like Blank Man, like that. I didn't know what a parody was. That was also my intro into parody, and I thought that Blank Man was a real person. Like here's Damon Wayans. I believe it's Damon Wayans, and here he is dressed up in pajamas, and I was like, oh, this is a superhero? Like, I can go put on pajamas, but then I learned as I got older, no, he's not really a superhero. He's a parody hero. But it had a message that, like, anyone could be a superhero. I thought that was pretty tight. You know, I thought it was pretty cool. So, as funny as that is, that was actually my first experience with a black superhero was Blank Man. But changed my life seeing that movie on VHS.
Right. I mean, it's such an interesting thing to have to look at because speaking of gaps, whenever I looked at like basically what I listed in like historic bits from when I was a kid, because I'm 28. A lot has happened in my tiny adult life, and so it's like thinking of my first superhero. It's like I grew up during the Justice League age. So we had Jon Stewart, and then when we did the Saturday morning cartoons, we had Static Shock, and most, like, I think of those distinct ones as a kid, and then suddenly it's like, oh, right, and then there's a gap of nothing, and then now we suddenly have all these new things that came out, and I'm like, oh, wow, wait.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's the lull for them, having to figure out not only is there a market for it, but finding ways to present it in a way that it's digestible.
Right, and it's like, I mean, the way I talk about it with Brad is that we have, it's like, especially when you're a kid and you're into superheroes, you've got two different distinctions. You've got the kid superhero that like you can either relate to or hang out with, and then you've got the adult superhero that you like aspire to be. And so it's like Green Lantern it was one of those, like, he was just there, he was a fact of life, but Static Shock was the one that I really like was sitting and invested in, and it's just interesting to be able to see that distinction because, I didn't really get back into the comics superhero scene until much later.
Yeah, Static Shock was multiple Emmy award winning, and it was, of course, based on the Milestone comics. And Dwayne McDuffie, who was the co-founder of Milestone, who I've mentioned many times on the show before, one of my personal heroes. Mm-hmm. He was a writer on Justice League for a long time, and so he was a big part of getting Static Shock brought to the screen. And so I think it was important that he was one of the primary creators. Mm-hmm. I think that's what made it so good.
Yeah.
But
and just to put a little perspective on it, I'm probably like the grandma of the group. I'm like 46. So me growing up in the 70s, I am too. So growing up in the 70s, we didn't have a lot of black superheroes. All of our Saturday morning cartoons, all we really had was the Batman, the Superman, the Wonder. That was really it, and anyone that you emulated or wanted to be like didn't really look like you. It wasn't until later on into the 90s, and now that we're in the 2000s and things of becoming a little bit more equitable with color and colorism and putting people's faces that they can recognize themselves on screen. Kids are actually seeing more heroes of color. We didn't have that in the 70s and in the 80s. Not at all. We didn't have any of that stuff.
I think the best that they had, and it's one that I talk about, is the Super Friends. One of the latter series and introduced Cyborg, I know that my favorite character, Firestorm, appeared at the same time as Cyborg, and I remember even when I was a kid, because I'm closer to your age, was because I grew up in a diverse community, and so I mean I appreciated having a person of color in the room. So I'm like, okay, this starting to look more like even the world I lived in, and I found it was kind of ironic when they started trying to bring Cyborg to the front in Justice League, and everybody's like, Cyborg's not part of Justice League, he's in Teen Titans, because a lot of kids grew up with the Teen Titans. But I'm like, well, when I was a kid, my first time I ever saw Cyborg, he was on the Justice League, so right. There's precedent there. So, but yeah, he was one of the effort characters, you might want to say. I mean, he's better than Black Vulcan. I know Super Friends had tried at one point, and I don't remember if it was like a well-meaning attempt or if it was some kind of network mandated or whatever. But at one point they were introduced more ethnically diverse characters who, like you said, just ended up being stereotypes. And Black Vulcan, Apache Chiefs, Samurai, Eldorado, they were not when you've got distance and time, and you can have, nostalgia is tinting a lot of stuff nowadays. But at the time, a lot of people found it very distasteful. So, except for the kids, because sometimes kids are kids.
we don't know until it's too late usually. Yeah.
That's kind of an interesting point. This is very kind of sort of off topic, but that's somewhat of an interesting point where we'll see something and we'll go, oh man, this is very offensive. And then sometimes I want to go, well, to who? Because 5-year-old me doesn't find any of what you're doing right now offensive. I don't know it's offensive until you instill that garbage in my head, And I think that's pretty interesting because I know I've seen something. I'm trying to think of the superhero that I saw, and I don't remember. I really wish I knew the name, but it was an episode of a cartoon that I saw, and adults were taking offense to it because they went, "Oh, well, white people aren't like that. Like we don't all live in the ghetto, and we don't all, But the kid in me was going, but this is my reality, though. Like, why are you so upset, Mom? Like this is my reality. I'm not bothered by it at 9, 10 years old because this is life. Now show me an episode where he's in the ghetto, but then he gets out of it. Then it's okay. But if you just keep him there the entire time and then you make it seem like, oh, okay, well then this is where he starts and this is what he's going to aspire to be by the end, okay, then you can take offense. But if all you take offense to is the environment, then it kind of, I think you almost start to kind of like lose your meaning a little bit. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I can't hear you guys if you're talking.
We've lost sound.
How about now?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, we can hear you now.
I had to talk to my grandfather about stuff like that because it's like, for them, it's one of those, like, you're basically certain stories. Like, they have to see the broader perspective of, like, why these stories are being told. And so it's one of those, like, if they see, oh, there's another story about a gang member with this, I'm like, I get why you're upset. Just at least when I was a kid, I didn't have the perspective that I do now, where you're having to see the broader picture of stuff. So it's like it's one of those, like, because being in a poor part of the city and dealing with this kind of stuff was part of my childhood. So I didn't think anything of it until suddenly someone was like, wait, no.
Yeah. That's why I find people like Aaron Magruder with like the Boondocks, for example. Like the Boondocks is a really great example of like Black people who can take offense and people who can take offense to their own reality. And even to this day, that blows my mind sometimes because I go, well, no, this is our reality. These are things that we do, and you're allowed to take offense. But it's sometimes I just want people to take a step back sometimes and go, what are we taking offense with? There's a lesson here. Like, no, too many people aren't trying to learn lessons anymore. Like there's a lesson to this, and you can laugh at it and learn the lesson. But if you look at it and you're just like, oh, it makes me angry, it makes me mad. It's, like there's a difference between exploitation for the sake of exploiting someone, and there is a sense of exploiting for the sense of, I guess, satire is where I'm trying to get to.
Especially with the Boondocks, because Boondocks, it's like, yeah, I'm sure there are some people who were just like, it was just funny, but I'm like, dude, like as I got older, I was like, oh, there's a lot of good social commentary in this, and it's like you want to be mad, but at the same time, it's like it's addressing all this stuff where we don't always address. It's like, yeah, I really liked the Boondocks.
Oh, yeah.
So just really off topic.
There are examples of that in superhero stuff too. I know. One of the things we were talking about. I've seen people complain. It's like they don't want social commentary in their entertainment, and it should be, it should be pure escapism. And I'm like, you can be entertained and learn at the same time.
Right. Plus, it's escape. I mean, some people get the luxury of escapism, but not everyone gets to.
Thank you.
And it's just one of those, like, yeah, it's not something we get to personally be able to avoid. So it's like, that's why I like the Boondocks so much, because it's like we were able to laugh, but it was basically it was stuff that we still needed to talk about.
Well, sometimes it's like, well, if it makes you uncomfortable, then good. That was the point, right? Like even me, and I consider myself enlightened to a degree, but there are things that will, and a lot of amazing media has come out recently, and I'm like, wow, that's I never would have even thought of that, or because I'm not in that. That was my world. That's not the way the world treats me, and so I wouldn't see that. And now seeing this, it's really good. I mean, I feel good and hope that people are learning from it. I know I really enjoy Black Lightning, and even though I have black friends who feel it's very stereotypical, and I wouldn't know that. I mean, I could. Well, some things are obvious. There's a degree where it's obvious, and I'm like, okay, I can see that. And there are other parts to me where it's like, well, some of this is a reality that people can learn from, and at the same time, there's also aspects that are universal elements, that if you can't empathize, well, then you're just a crap person,
right?
So whether you're entertained or not. But
right.
Yeah, so
well, in the discourse about those types of characters is funny, because it's like we started out with characters sort of in it, and then since Black Panther, we've gotten a resurgence of characters that, like, they were given to Black creators, they talked more about the Black experience, but these are characters that if you look back, like Luke Cage, where you're like, oh, there's a lot of this stuff is rooted in a lot of exploitation and a lot of, like, stuff that we're still trying to work through.
Yeah.
And it's like, especially with those, it's kind of hard to balance that.
Yeah. Like one of my favorite Marvel characters is Misty Knight, and I have so many comics with her in it, but going back and trying to read like the original stuff, I just can't. I just I've tried, and I'm like, it's an eye opener sometimes, to see some of that stuff, and it's one of the things that we had kind of set up is the difference between the necessity of having white creators at least acknowledge that Black people need to be in comic books and try, with varied success, versus having the Black creators create them. I mean, it was something, but we need more than just representation. We need good representation.
Well, and especially with those, it makes a huge difference story-wise. Like, because that's kind of the, like, genuine versus disingenuous representation, where it's like, it's like, basically the modern Luke Cage and the modern Black Lightning and all of those spoke more, at least to my personal experiences, than if I were to, like, read an old issue of Luke Cage.
Yeah.
I, not only that, it's profitable. I
Right.
think about how profitable like Black Panther was, and then how profitable Spider-Man, like Into the Spider-Verse was, and it's like you are getting a crash course of people who are, for better or worse, ready to listen, like regardless of what I think is going on. We're in this resurgence, or we're in this surge now, where it's like people are listening, like their ears are open, their eyes are open, and here are stories that for decades I feel we've been trying to tell. What is it like being, an Afro Latino in New York? What is it like being, like what can Africa be? No, Africa is not sticks, stones, and rocks and tree people. It's diamonds, it's gold, it's malls, it's technology. Like these are the aspects of like that experience I think of the black culture that nobody really knows about. When you think of black, like when I ask a white person what do they think the black experience is like, the answers are very similar all the time. But if I ask a black person, what do they think the black experience is like, I will get varying degrees of an answer. And I find that pretty interesting and I find that telling. And I have to ask myself, well, why is that? Why do black people feel like their experience is different to them than the way white people view the black experience is? And the only thing I can think of is, I wonder what life would be like if there were 30 Into the Spider Verses that had come out between the 80s and now. If there were 30 kinds of Black Panther, you get 30 Supermans, you get 30 Batmans, you get 30 Spider-Mans, but why can't you get 30 Into the Spider-Verses? Why can't you get 30 Black Panthers? Why did it take just a few years ago to get a Luke Cage? And it's like, oh, this is what it's like. And not only that, you notice that the personal trials that a white superhero goes through and what a black superhero goes through are vastly different. And I find that, and that's something I never thought about. Like what Luke Cage goes through, trying to just a dude trying to protect his neighborhood. Clark Kent is out here not protecting his neighborhood. Like,
That's a really amazing point. I actually was flipping through something, and this one comedian, and it was YouTube or something, and it said why black superheroes can only save black people, and the comedian, and he was doing it in a tongue-in-cheek voice, but he's like, and he made a really amazing point. He's like, white superheroes can protect the whole world because they have the luxury of doing so. And it's like black superheroes, they need to protect their community. They're local. It's like they don't have time for all of that. They have plenty to do in their own backyard. And so I found that really, like, characters like Luke Cage and stuff like that. And it's amazing that those stories are written that way because it's a completely different experience.
Yeah. And it kind of humanizes these superheroes because it's like, I don't know about you guys, but like when I grew up, I was not trying to be Superman. Sometimes I find myself in a minority. I don't like Superman. I've never liked Superman, even though I think he has a rich background. Even though I think he has a rich background, I've never enjoyed the story of Superman, but I have enjoyed the story of like Robin. Like I find that interesting. I sometimes look at Gotham, for example, and I think that's why I related to Batman so much, is I look at the story of not even Gotham, just look at the story of Commissioner Gordon. What a terrible thing he has going on with Joker. I think it sometimes rivals Batman sometimes, the way his family is treated. And it's just, you get stories of police brutality when you take the lens off of Batman but put it in the world that Batman is in. I don't really care about Metropolis. Now Gotham is interesting. Gotham is realistic. That is New York. That is LA. That is downtown. There is no Metropolis that I know of, but Batman, that makes sense to me. So it's interesting when you look at these people and you go, man, these are dudes just patrolling their city. Batman never leaves Gotham. I found that interesting. Like, he never leaves it. He's always fighting the same criminals and doing the same stuff and over. But then you go, well, so are policemen. So what we're doing, we're just trying to survive day by day. We don't have time for anything else. I like that you made that point. There is no time to do anything else. This is it. And I always thought that was kind of interesting, that I never thought about that. That here's this rich guy who can do whatever he wants, and he chooses just to stay in Gotham and then just keep protecting the same people every day. And I thought that was interesting.
It is.
Right, and it had gotten so interesting because one of our past episodes about it was the one talking about pandemics. I got to read Batman Cataclysm to No Man's Land, and there's a lot of bits of that really hit me hard because basically the theme of No Man's Land is, this place is a hellhole. Why is this place worth saving? Like at the end of Cataclysm, Batman had the time as Bruce Wayne to leave, and he had to make the decision to come back and decide that these people are worth saving. And even though not all of Batman's stories resonate with me, like that feeling of, we may be past the point of no return, but I need to at least come back and try, because even though these people are all like, even if they're destroying each other, even if they're like infighting within each other, there's still people who are worth saving.
And that kind of goes towards one of our topics. Point was the difference between universal themes and superheroes. Things that it shouldn't matter if the hero is white or not, and the value and impact of personal experiences and having the Black characters with the unique, different experiences from everybody's view. Because I know you had made some really good points about that, and it's like, whereas there's part of me. I know when Miles Morales first came out, and people were talking about, Peter Parker being white he would be more important if Peter Parker was Black versus creating a new Black one. And my thought was like, why does Peter Parker have to be Black to be able to relate to you? Should be able to relate to him as just a kid in New York, So there is that aspect of it, but then once Miles really started picking up and people got into him and you started to understand that difference and how important it was. So yes, there are universal themes, no doubt, but having that connection, yeah, it's so important.
I think sometimes people have the notion that we need to be the main character. I actually don't think that at all. I actually relate sometimes more to supporting cast than I do main cast. And I like your point where I don't need Peter Parker to be Black at all. I don't need Bruce Wayne to be Black. I don't need any of that. What I need, though, is that if you're going to put a Black person in there, you better show his strengths and not just what you assume he's genetically or biologically going to be the best at. I need somebody to do calculus. I need somebody to know how to turn on a Bunsen burner. I need something that normally isn't attributed to Black people. That's what I need.
The reason that I love the Batwoman show so much as a gay person, I really enjoyed having the gay lead and everything. But then it's not just about that. They put so much thought into the diversity, and the supporting characters. Like our favorite, hands down, is her sister Mary. Who is Asian, and Luke Fox is just so endearing. And one of the pioneers that I was talking about was the Arrowverse in general. The Arrow show is good. Well, actually, it started off a little rocky. I actually watched it for John Barrowman, I'll tell you the truth. But John Diggle, the character of Diggle, was so amazing. That show and that entire universe would not have been successful without. He was such a impactful character, and the actor did such an amazing job with him that they integrated him into the comics, and that had only and that doesn't happen very often, where they cross-platform like that. So that showed a really important need and aspect of the characters. Like the Flash is a really good one too, because like I grew up in the era where Wally West was the Flash, and my last name is West, and of course Wally West was white and he had red hair, and so that's when I read Wally West until the Flash came back. But then when they made Iris and Joe Black on the Flash TV show, that was a bold move, and a lot of people had a problem with it. And I swear, Joe is like probably the strongest character. I mean, granted, he's a veteran, the actor is amazing, but is the strongest character on that show. And you see lots of superhero shows, they eventually write the parents out, and he's still on it. So that says a lot to it too. And Keenan Lonsdale, when he did Kid Flash, I was like, I loved him as Wally West. I love that. And a lot of people have a problem with that. I'm like, I don't know why, but so yeah, it's like really cool. And it was really interesting because I know the actress who plays Iris at one of the conventions was asked about it, and about taking over a traditionally white character's role, and she's like, I've already been approached about the Flash movie and found out that they're writing her in the movie, Iris is going to be black too. You know, so I mean, she's like, obviously it works. You know, so I think that's an amazing one too.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Bradley, when you say that the supporting character should add value, if you're just, going to stick a black person in there. I don't know if you guys saw Bloodshot with Vin Diesel. Is it Bloodshot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Bloodshot.
Bloodshot. And the supporting character, Wiggins, he was the programmer. It would not be something you would typically see the black character doing. But he saved the day, he saved the world, saved everything with his programming and coding skills. And he was the mastermind coder, and he was smarter than the coder that, that the FBI had and the CIA and everybody else had. And it was a great introduction for a black character in that comic setting, so yeah, someone that does calculus, someone that not just, oh, he can run really fast and he's going to be our running. So I did appreciate them adding Wiggins in and making him a black character. That was a good add for that.
Well, and it's like, I mean, talking about, because I referenced this the first time that I talked with Bradley on one of these shows. They had the whole thing about consarn it, Childish Gambino being that people wanting him to be Peter Parker. And yeah, and he it's like it was kind of an interesting thing to talk about because when I grew up, like maybe a year after I was born is when Death of Superman came out. So I grew up during that era of comics where anything was possible, nothing was considered a big deal. And the thing that kind of resonated with it wasn't necessarily that he was mad that people didn't want him to be Peter Parker. It was the thing he mentioned with one of the people trying to reason with him, where he said, it wouldn't be realistic for that character. And he said, like, you mean there's not a kid who's interested in science who lives in New York with his grandma who likes photography? And it's like,
and they can't be black.
And it's a testament to the whole, like, basically how people see our experiences and how we see each other is different, because I know those kids. It's like I have those siblings. And it's like it's like we're at a point where we're like, sure, occasionally we want to talk about the hard stuff, but we are not equal to our suffering all the time. And it's like we're not a monolith. There's a big diverse group of us who have different interests and different things that we like. And it's like the idea that someone basically would come to him and say, a black kid who fits these exact same characteristics as Peter Parker is unrealistic is like,
why?
Yeah, that's like everybody knows what those kids.
Yeah. I think that was the whole point of the Spider-Verse movie, was to kind of try and start opening that door and saying, that everybody can be this, everybody can do this. This is something, I think that was really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy a lot of the Miles Morales comics and stuff. They're I don't want to revisit. We did all do the minority swap episode where we were talking about swapping out characters. But this time around, let's just kind of explore the difference between those characters taking the name of established characters versus original characters and original ideas being brought to the forefront. For instance, like, I really do appreciate, it wasn't too successful because in the end, the Justice League movie got completely screwed. But I do appreciate DC when they relaunched the New 52, they didn't just make a main Justice League member black. They actually took one of their historically black characters and actually focused on him and brought him to the forefront. And I like the idea of Cyborg being more than just a sidekick character and stuff, and so that was kind of cool to me.
Right. And for people who've seen Doom Patrol, I found out they gave him a really cool story in Doom Patrol.
Oh, he is really cool in Doom Patrol.
And it's like it adds a lot more dimension to his character. And I loved it. I'm glad they're bringing him more aggressively to the forefront.
So yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Like, who do you think is either the most impactful Black superhero, or who are the most important ones now? Somebody's buzzing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say definitely. I mean, I'm just going to be extremely generic, and I'm just going to say Black Panther. And the reason I'm just going to say Black Panther is just because some people like to say, oh, okay, well, these characters are important because there would be no Black Panther without this, and then there would be no this without this. And sometimes arguments like that are extremely unfair. I feel like, because some people go, well, there can't be a Star Trek without this, but it doesn't matter because we're not talking about that anymore. We're talking about the next generation. We're talking about Star Trek. Star Trek is the one that did the influencing. It doesn't matter that they didn't build the original house. They built a bigger house. So that's what we're talking about right now. Like, that's what we care about. And so Black Panther, I'm just going to go with Black Panther just because you're talking about a movie that fueled the world. Like that wasn't a deal. Yeah, like that was it. Like that was, you had people who had never cared about comics. They never cared about cartoons. They never cared about the medium. They never cared about that culture. And you had people spending their hard-earned $15 and saying, I get it now, leaving the theater. Like that. There is no movie I can think of that had that kind of cultural significance in the comic book era. Like, I can't think of that. Luke Cage did
maybe Wonder Woman.
Right. I'm thinking it's purely of my skin tone, but no, you're exactly correct. Right. Yeah.
I thought you meant just cultural impact as a whole.
Oh, no, sorry. Cultural impact of Black people. Like, yeah,
okay. It crossed boundaries. It had people of every skin tone and every ethnicity. I mean, you saw people, because we did promos at different theaters, and you saw all types of people walking out like this and making signs. And for weeks after, you would see people doing this, and you would be like, you saw the movie. I know it, you did. It was like a phenomenon, and people were moved by it. So I get what you're saying. It touched the world. People all over the world saw it, and they were open to it.
Yep. And not only that, you finally had people asking questions. Like, it was like, let's start a dialogue. When you talk about a movie that was the lubricant to starting a proper conversation, this movie did it. It was not only that, but Brad, going back to your point about women, nobody talks about T'Challa much in this movie. You're talking about the warriors in this movie. You're talking about the women in this movie. Those are the people who truly... Right, like you're talking about the...
Gosh, we had so many people before the movie came out coming to Joanne's where we work, looking for like the beads and the fabrics, and it was amazing. Just amazing.
It was a big deal. It's like, and it probably notably for us, it's like, because I grew up my entire life, especially in those gaps between Static Shock and Black Panther, being told that it's like, because that was when the backlash started happening, and they were like, oh, the reason we're not giving you any more Black superheroes, or we're just going to throw you this half bone of this character and the distant background, is because Black people aren't profitable. And so suddenly we go to Black Panther, and literally the only two movies that are making more money, or the two Marvel movies making more money, are Endgame and Infinity War. And that was suddenly the moment where they were like, oh, you mean if we like give you this stuff, you'll pay for it? And we're like, yes.
And you treat it right, and you treat it with respect, and you actually make it seem like, okay, you do actually give a crap about what you're talking about. You are trying to do the original lore, the story justice. You're not trying to spoon feed us my ancestors came in slave ships, and I'm angry, and you killed my dad. And it's like, oh no, this is so much more than that. I actually really like when Chadwick, actually, just to transition to Chadwick, I actually like when he gave that interview, and I think it was Stephen Colbert, I don't remember, where he said, who's the bad guy? And he said, there is no bad guy. He was like, Killmonger nor me are the bad guy or the good guy. All you have are two. Yeah. Go ahead.
They're the hero in their own story.
Everybody thinks they're the hero in their own story. When he said that, that is exactly correct. Because I watched that movie, and if you came out thinking Killmonger was the villain, you weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
And that's what was great. Like, I almost resonated more with Killmonger than I did T'Challa. And I went, that is how you tell a story. It's not like, like a Batman or Superman. Oh, Joker's obviously the bad guy. Batman's obviously the good guy. It's like, no, I have no idea who's really at play here. And that's why I like the movie played itself. The movie was whatever you interpreted it to be, and you got a lesson from it. And I can't think of not just a black superhero movie. I can't think of a movie, period, that really does that as well as that movie did. That just told a story. Leave it up to you. It's a choose your own adventure book. Go to page 5.
Yeah, and apart from telling the story, kind of like black people have we've kind of hid in the shadows a little bit when it comes to cosplay, getting dressed, representing ourselves and stuff. And we, there's not a lot of black characters for us to choose from. So, we get dressed up as the Batmans, the Superman and stuff, Halloween or whatever events and stuff we go to. And this was a time where even if you weren't a cosplayer, black people and women especially, like you said, Brad, went to Joann's and they got fabric. And they put these fabrics on and they put beads on and jewelry. And they were like, I'm rocking my Wakanda wear. I'm rocking the African guards. Look at me. And I'm fabulous. And they weren't in this, well, if I wear this, it's kind of synonymous with slavery. People think I'm African. They think I'm something. It was this political. Yeah, it resonated, this pride with a movement of pride, and people got dressed up, and they weren't even cosplayers. People got dressed like in their Sunday finery to go see this film, they saw it repeatedly.
Well, and it was such a big thing because it was a combination of like, I had family members who have never seen these kind of movies in their life, who I remember being a kid and then being like, it's like you reading these comics is boy stuff. And they all swarmed to go see Black Panther. It's like I had never seen social media go so alight with a bunch of black folks coming together to go watch this movie. Because it's like, on top of the regular stuff, it spoke to some issues that it's like outside of talking to each other, we don't talk about. Like, especially with the Killmonger situation, because a lot of us are part of the diaspora. So we are people who are born from slaves, who were taken from Africa and brought here. And our history had been systematically erased to the point where a lot of us can't trace that back. Yeah. And it's like that is a big thing we've butted heads with other people who have immigrated from Africa, where it's like we are part of them, but we don't feel like we belong. And so to bring Killmonger in as a testament to that like loneliness that we all feel, of course, black folks in America, we were going to sit there and be like, yeah, he's speaking back. Right? It's very forward, but I get it. Yeah. And it's such a subtle thing.
I think, and this is not to overly express my age, but Trinity and I are both from the generation where we were born from the parents who lived during the Roots era. And so that was a really big deal for TV. It was a television thing, but it was such a big deal, and it had a major cultural impact. It's the only thing I can think of historically in entertainment that had that kind of inspiration for the Black community to start trying to reclaim that history. I know I grew up with, like I said, I always say my mom was like kind of a hippie, and so I kind of grew up with those kids that were from that, where their parents were, and so they all had the African names, and they started really the first generation where they stopped giving all the kids white names, you know, and it was a big deal. Like a lot of my friends had like really interesting names, and that's one of the things I grew up learning about and why, and the meanings of those just names, and that's an important thing to carry over culturally, you know. So I think that's kind of an interesting aspect of it too.
Right. It's like, so it's like we're gonna pick a bit to lighten everything up. It's like, because this was such a section me and Brad had to laugh about.
Yes.
But I have called this one Never Forget, which is talking about all Black superheroes you've either seen in movies or in comics or anything like that, who you think just either didn't get the recognition they deserved or they weren't treated very well. It's like just that one that like irks your soul. It's like, do you guys have one that like you think about it and you're like, oh dang it, yeah, I didn't like that. It's like, y'all take your pick first.
There's so many. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Like I know, for instance, I'll start while y'all are thinking.
Yeah, sure, please.
One of my favorites is the Legion of Superheroes. Greg, help me out. Writer. Chris Claremont. Chris Claremont, who is like very famous for creating Storm for the X-Men. He originally created Storm, Nightcrawler, and a couple of others. They were not originally meant for Marvel Comics. They were originally meant for DC's Legion of Superheroes, because even though Legion of Superheroes is set like in the 30th century, there was no diversity. They were all white people, and DC didn't want those characters, and so when he went over and started writing X-Men and did the Giant Size X-Men, he pulled out Storm and Nightcrawler. They were originally meant to be for Legion of Superheroes, and Legion of Superheroes has an interestingly bad history of representation. When they finally tried to adjust, because fans were writing in, you know, why are you in the future? And it's like this utopia, but there's no Black people. So then they're like, okay, we'll have a reason for why they're not there. Well, they were all on their own island, segregated from everybody. So they tried bringing in this character, Tyrock, and he was so stereotyped that the artist who was writing it, he deliberately made, if you want to go Google it, I promise you will not be disappointed. He deliberately made the costume as horrible as possible so that the character would not continue on because he disliked the representation of him so much.
Right. Just to make sure, that's the one with the loincloth and the fez, right?
No. The loincloth and the fez was actually, I think, a Jon Stewart, where they were going in his mind and they were doing battle on the mindscape. Tyrock is the one who had like this really crazy low-cut silver thing with like, and this big collar and little pixie boots, and it was horrific. It's just horrific, you know. But that was, you know, a couple of things. Jim Starling, I think it was, that was also writing Legion of Superhero. There was a character, Pharaoh, that had a mask and he never showed his face, and you always assumed he was disfigured or something. And he wanted to write him as finally revealing that he's Black underneath, and DC wouldn't let him do it, so he just killed the character off. It's like breaking his toys, you know. Those are kind of some of my favorite interesting ones. I think the one that really I find just distasteful was a an Avengers character in the 90s named Rage, who was a teenage boy, who was a Black kid who got angry and turned into an adult, and that was his superhero power. You know, do you remember him? You remember him?
Rage is very familiar. I remember Rage, and his costume design was pretty what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I was gonna say bland, basic, normal, and I don't know. Yeah,
I considered him a superhero. I didn't. Yeah, I wouldn't have. He wouldn't have even crossed my mind.
Yeah, it's just one of the ones that when I was like I said, the era I was reading, and you know, I mean, I always cling to just powerful characters regardless, but some of my favorites, like one of my favorites is like when I first started reading comic books, the first comic books my parents ever actually bought me, it was for Christmas. It was like this stack of like, you know, the random ones that they would sell at Walmart in the plastic bag. And it was Secret Wars. It was Marvel's Secret Wars. And my first Captain Marvel was Monica Rambeau. And as one of the characters I kind of grew to I really liked. I loved her in the Avengers. And so, you know, when Captain Marvel became out and the movie, and everybody's like, oh, you know, it's like the first time that, you know, it's so important that they have Captain Marvel as a woman now. And I'm like, well, you know what? Actually, Captain Marvel was a black woman, and she was much cooler to me. But, you know, I just find that interesting. Mm-hmm. What are some of your, like, ones? I know you have problems with the X-Men characters.
Yes. I mean, it's like one of the ones that I grew with slight rage over time was learning about Bishop. Because that was one of those characters. It's like, basically, I started, it's like one of my things was talking about Black history and pop culture. And so I started collecting pins with a bunch of Black superheroes. And one of them was Bishop. And I remember someone had finally told me who he was. And I was like, oh, okay, what's going on? And I found out he was in one of the movies the entire time. And could have been a better basically could have been a character that had turned the tides of Days of Futures Past. And he dies horribly. Multiple times. And I'm still like, why?
And Darwin, like we said, his literal power is to adapt to anything.
That one speaks to my soul. I'm still upset about it.
And he's a red shirt, you know? It's you know, he's a disposable character, and it is kind of frustrating. I know they do that a lot with the gay characters, that they make them, you know, oh, hey, we've got this character, he's this thing, you know, so you should come and buy our comics, but then, you know, he's like a Kleenex, and like we're done with him. He served his purpose, you know. So, unfortunately, there is that history of superheroes doing that. They don't always get that.
I think one that irritated me, and it's not so much that the character irritated me, is that the original Black Panther, his name was Coal Tiger, as in coal, C-O-A-L.
Oh.
You know, and yeah, it was synonymous, you know, with, you know, Black people putting coal on their face and white people putting coal on their face back in the day. And that was his name. And the theory was that he wasn't going to last very long. So they didn't put very much effort into him. And I really didn't like the naming. You know, and this is, I think, probably back to 1966, 67, when his origins. But yeah, he was Coal Tiger, you know, and you can obviously see that, all right, well, you know, here's this guy.
Oh, gotcha.
Because they were into it. And so, you know, that irritated me with the naming of Black Panther. And I'm really glad that that got changed along history.
I know one of the ones that's really funny, if you said the original names, Jon Stewart's name was originally Lincoln Washington.
Yeah, it was something that
it was Lincoln Washington. And the writer went to Julie Schwartz. I forget who was writing him. I want to say Neil Adams or one of the big names at the time. One of the ones who was socially aware, and he went to the editors of Marvel and said, "Okay, this isn't gonna fly." And Julie Schwartz just didn't understand why. He's like, "Oh well, you know, a lot of Black people." And no, that's because they were being given, you know, names from the Emancipation, and it was Lincoln Washington is super stereotyping. And he's like, well then what would you name him? He's like, just give him a name, a normal name, a person name, John, right? Something.
Throw a dart in the wall.
Give him a name. Anything but Lincoln Washington, and that's pretty much where we got Jon Stewart's name. So I always found that interesting, and I really love that, in spite of the fact that Jon Stewart was originally, you were talking about the gaps in places in history, they wrote him as a very brief alternative to Hal Jordan. I mean, he was only there for a couple, I think historically maybe 8 issues, before he was just forgotten to time for many years. Until Marv Wolfman came and created Kyle Rayner, and Hal Jordan was gone, and he reintroduced Jon Stewart, and of course, like I said, our hero Dwayne McDuffie, when he developed the Justice League cartoon, he's like, okay, you know, we need representation, and rather than just making somebody randomly, he's like, well, if we're gonna do the Justice League and Green Lantern, let's use the Black Green Lantern. And it's like, why not? And so that's where like a whole generation of kids first black superhero is Green Lantern, Jon Stewart.
Right. I still think that's partly, I mean, aside from all the other terrible issues, why Green Lantern like tanked. Because I remember being a kid and like that Green Lantern movie coming out, and I'm like, who the hell is this guy?
Mm-hmm.
Where's Jon?
So all right. So two quick things. First, Kevin Smith actually did an interview with I believe it was who was it? One of the Green Lantern who did the Speedy story.
Oh.
Was it Neil Adams at the time? At any rate, but he was doing an interview with Kevin Smith, and he flat out told him it's like the reason Green Lantern failed is because they went with Hal Jordan, and it's like it was at a time when everybody was aware of Green Lantern as Jon Stewart, and it's like, why did we reverse back? And a personal story, and this is kind of a weird one, and it kind of it hurts me in my heart.
Denny O'Neil.
Denny O'Neil, that's it.
Oh.
Denny O'Neil. But it hurts me in my heart personally because the year that Green Lantern came out was the first year of Comic-Palooza in Houston. And our group got invited to go to do Comic-Palooza as Green Lanterns. We had like this huge, I had friends flying in from out of state, my Dragon Con friends flew in, and we had like 12 Green Lanterns. And it was amazing. We had this huge Green Lantern thing. And they had some of the actors from the movie, including, and now I feel really bad for this dude, but, or maybe I feel really good for him, I don't know. So he was actually, not a lot of people know this, but there were scenes filmed in the Green Lantern movie with Jon Stewart.
Oh.
There was a Jon Stewart. We actually got to sit with him at Comic-Palooza because, unfortunately, he didn't know that when the movie came out 2 months later that all of the scenes were cut, so I kind of feel bad, but I think you can see, there's like, seriously, if you go through and watch the movies, there's a couple of scenes with one of the random black soldiers, and I recognize him as Jon Stewart because we met him. I don't think they give him credit for that in even the credits. So like either he got shafted because they just cut all the scenes, or he just luckily narrowly escaped this bad movie staying on his resume. I don't know. But yeah, that was kind of an interesting one.
Going back to the original question, my hero is actually, I don't even know why she didn't come to my mind. It's actually going to be my first foray into cosplaying a female character. This is my first gender bend, and it's a Bumblebee from Young Justice.
Bumblebee.
And so I'm still working on her wings. We're almost there, guys. And I actually wish that she got more recognition. I actually like her for the same reason I like Moon Girl and Ironheart. And like I think after I saw Black Panther, even I felt numb to, not numb. I felt complacent is not the right word either. But let's just go with it. I fell kind of complacent to the fact that I didn't understand that there's black representation and then there's black women representation, and even Black Panther kind of opened my eyes to go, this story isn't even about Black Panther. Like, this story is about Wakanda. Like, this isn't even about T'Challa. This isn't even about Killmonger. This is about all of these people who are trying to, I mean, like one of the best scenes in the movie is when he goes to the spirit world and he's talking to his father, and it's like you get this whole realm of spirituality and this whole arcing back to wanting to know about your ancestry and where you came from. And I thought that was interesting. So the more I actually dug into Karen Beecher, Bumblebee, and the more I thought about, Lafayette, and the more I thought about, Ironheart, I didn't even know that Iron Man gave her the mantle when he slipped in his coma and she led the second. So like, I didn't know anything about any of that. And these are ridiculously awesome stories for people who maybe aren't into comics but enjoy the movies a lot. They should get their due, because a lot of people have this weird misconception that comic books, like you were kind of saying that about how comic books are for boys. Like, comic books, those stories have always been a guy thing. And then it's like, but if you really are fans of comics, you would know that women they're taking over. Like this is their medium. They're becoming the strongest heroes in these stories. No one is smarter than Lafayette, for example. She's the undisputed Marvel genius, and she's a child from New Orleans. Like, that's a story that the average person, the average consumer doesn't know. Moon Girl should get a story. Bumblebee should get a story. Ironheart deserves a story. Like they all deserve stories, and it's like I think all of them. I mean, especially when it comes to Black women. That talk about marginalized.
Black women and women in comics, and you know, like when you guys talk about it being for boys, I had that problem growing up where, you know, boys would always be like, "Why are you doing that? That's a boy thing. Boys read comics and stuff." And you know, and like reading comics, you know, I learned all of these other facts, and it made me so much cooler as I got to college and I got older. I could hang out with the boys and the girls, and I found this whole geek group of people that were like really weird and sophisticated and knew all these things. And you know, you learn so much more than just when you wait for a movie to come out on TV. Like I do Madam Hydra, you know, like in all green and stuff with my big Hydra pin.
No, I got my shield on.
They're like, well, who's that? You're like, you know, you got to read your comic books, dude. You got to get up on your game. You can't just wait for a movie to come out. There's not going to be a Madam Hydra comic. You got to read your books.
And we're getting really lucky for not for women and superheroes. We talk about Greg Berlanti as being a big advocate for. He's producer of a lot of the CW shows, and right now. Of the CW shows, I think Flash and technically Black Lightning are the only two led by men. But Black Lightning, his daughters are as central to that show as he is. Mm-hmm. And then you've got Supergirl. And then the possible spinoff of Green Arrow is going to be his daughter. And then you've got Batwoman. And then on top of that, for personal reasons, Ruby Rose stepped down from Batwoman, and I wrote down the actress's name. She's lovely, but the new Batwoman's going to be a Black woman.
Yeah.
And you know,
be what's her name? Leslie. Jafisa Jafisa Leslie. Is that her name?
I couldn't commit it to memory yet.
Oh, yeah, that's her.
Relatively new.
Yeah.
It's relatively new. I'm not familiar with her work, but I mean, I'm really interested to see how they do it. It's good. You know, as long as the stories are good and the representation is authentic, you know. Yeah. So yeah, women definitely. Yeah, I'm lucky, and we've talked about this before. I'm lucky. I grew up with geek girlfriends, and you know, and it's actually ironic. With my environment where I grew up, the quote unquote straight guys didn't read comics. Like the jocks didn't read comics. Comics, you know, I literally got accused of you know, comics were gay. Like literally, that's what they would say, is that comics were gay.
Right, and those are the same people now who, anytime a woman comes up or anytime like new representation comes up, they're like, how dare you? These were my things. And it's like, what are you talking about?
No, they weren't. So yeah, I was lucky that I never actually had to personally experience the comics are for boys thing, because and that was not, you know, my group. I think I was insulated probably, but you know, lucky at the same time.
Right. Well, and I had a weird intersection with my growing up as a Black nerd because, you know, we were just coming up with all of these shows, and so it's like my circle was mainly my brothers. And when I got older and I started talking to more people, and especially when I moved from like my side of town to the north side of town with like the more progressive school, but the white majority school, a lot of people were like, hey, why are you a nerd? It's like it's like we didn't even realize Black people like this stuff, let alone a Black girl on top of it. And so it's like, it was for a very short time, but like during high school, I felt really isolated from everybody because it's like, basically all of the gatekeeping stuff happened to me twofold because it's like, you know, I was a woman, so I had to prove myself. And then I was Black on top of that, meaning I either only liked a restricted amount of characters or, you know, if I said like my favorite character was Captain America, they were like, well, that doesn't really sound true. And it took, especially with women geeks, it's like it took me getting older and like seeking out those spaces for me to finally get back into the feel of it. And it's like, I said it on Facebook, Black Panther was such a big deal because it's like most of us are kind of sitting in the background, and that was the first time I had felt personally like seen, like all of the, you know, because it was such a big deal that, like, you know, it wasn't just me and my brothers going to see it, like my entire family went to see it. Like suddenly people were like, oh, these stories are worth it, and like, oh, there's a bigger world, and like this is the reason why you like this stuff. And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of ironic you mentioning kind of, and by the way, I can imagine you guys busting their ego when you knew more about it than they did. I can only see their faces now. But
I hurt my feelings.
yeah. I bet you both did. Probably mine too. I imagine if you guys felt the same way, where it was almost like this badge of honor when Black Panther came out, and it was like, you know, because kind of going to like your conversation, I didn't get it twofold, of course. I only got it onefold. I only got it from white men. I didn't get it from white women, obviously. I got it from white men, where it was just, oh, you don't know anything about, you know, yeah, oh, everybody knows Superman and Batman. What do you know about, you know, the more obscure ones? And then, you know, I would have my conversations, burst their bubble, move on. But then here comes Black Panther, where it's like, oh, now I'm the expert. Now you're looking to me for information. You're looking to me for my opinion. Why? Because it's a black hero, and that one I have to know about. You know more about Superman than me because he's a white guy, but I know more about Black Panther than you because he's a black man. And it's like, no, I know more about all of them than you. And it's interesting that when Black Panther came out, it's like none of that. White noise, static, quiet.
Yeah.
And it's I always found that interesting that even in the nerd community, even in nerd culture, there's this sense of gatekeeping with the medium that is historically all inclusive. And it just blows my mind. It's like there's gatekeeping for some things for a reason. This is not one of them. Like this is the epitome of anti-gatekeeping.
Knowing about Superman and stuff, I only started reading Superman at the death of Superman. I only took an interest to it at the death of Superman. Actually, not even really the death of Superman. It was Reign of the Supermen, because I was really interested in the new characters that came out, and I loved both Steel and Superboy, and I have like all of their self-titled series. And the Steel comic book is like one of my favorites, and the movie was so wretched, but it does drive the point though that there's always been the black geeks. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal's a huge Superman fan, you know, and he jumped at the opportunity to do something Superman with, you know, a movie and stuff. I think we're a little overtime, or are we running out of time?
Oh no, we're in overtime.
We're in overtime. So I do want to. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, no. If you have any other ones, I was gonna go into like the last section.
Oh, that's what I was gonna say. Well, we have time. We can try and wrap it up by 9.
I mean,
we want to talk. We're on the same page.
Yeah,
it's the future.
Basically, this one's an emotional big deal because it's like, you know, both of you guys have kids. And there are a lot of adults and kids right now that Chadwick Boseman has died, that feel very like lost, and they don't know what's next, because for some people, like all they have are these movies, and they're like, is this the end for us? Or it's like, is this the end for like people doing profitable black superhero movies? And it's like, the whole point of this thing is I want to be able to like give all these people some sort of hope or some sort of guidance. That's like, there's so many other cool stories to be told, and you know, especially with kids, it's like we want to be able to show them what's next.
Yeah, what does the future of black superheroes look like to you? What do we need more of? What do we need less of? What are you hopeful about?
It's like, yeah, what advice do you have, and like what comics, what stories do you guys recommend?
Like, the only thing I want to throw in there is, like, I'm really excited in spite of the fact that it's going to be in digital only. I'm really excited that they're bringing back the Milestone universe in February, and a new Static Shock and a new Icon and Rocket series. Those are two that I really enjoyed when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll let you go.
You know, I mean, okay. For me, so I've got 3 girls, and I have 3 boys. The boys are not as important. The girls are my legacy. Those are the ones that I really put the effort into.
That's awful. That's awful.
You know, I love them all equally if they ever see this film, but I really like them. but I'm raising three badass girls, right? And we've talked about this after Chadwick's passing and stuff, and we want to see his sister be the queen. We want to see what would naturally happen in the kingdom. We want to see her become the queen. We want to see her be, I mean, because she's already a badass, right? She knows all this technology. She knows everything. She's got all his secrets. We want to see her be our future and be that next hero for us. We know that she can go and we know that she can take it. We don't just want them to give us a placeholder. Oh, your character died. We're going to peanut butter jelly you a new guy. Here you go and fit this in. So we want to see this girl. We want to see her take over. We want to see this new generation of power and have her run the realm. And apart from that universe, I mean, I do see that we're starting to have, with the uprising, with the way the culture is right now, there's going to be some more superheroes, I think, coming out of the works, coming out of Hollywood. Whenever Hollywood comes back online, I think they are going to try to portray some more superhero-ish type characters with black faces, or some pseudo black faces, or some pseudo black stories, because of everything that we've gone through in this year alone.
Well, yeah, like the Watchmen TV series is a great example. It was so amazing and well written, and I don't care where you're from or what your background is, it's something you need to watch. I honestly believe this. I think that's why they made it free for that weekend and stuff too. But that points towards that way.
Well, also in the comics, Shuri was actually Black Panther for a while.
Yeah, Shuri was in fact Black Panther in the comic book.
When I looked at murmurings about it, that's the plan I thought they were going to do, is like, they basically, now that this is the new generation of heroes, that Shuri was going to be next.
Well, they would be morons not to, but you know how you know how Hollywood is. Mm-hmm. And like you said, Marvel is putting some good characters out there. One that I took an interest in DC. I've always loved Robin. I do Robin cosplay now, and they had a miniseries called We Are Robin, and I really took a liking to Duke Thomas, who is a Batman protege. I don't really care for his code name. He's called the Signal, like after the Bat Signal. But he's really interesting because of all of the Batman characters, Robins or whatever, he has the most optimistic kind of views, and Bruce puts him to patrol the city in the daytime. So that's like, he's not just having everybody at the night on the rooftops all the time, sleep deprived. He actually has like a daytime hero representative. That's one of my I look forward to in the future being brought to the forefront. I'd like to see Duke Thomas as a Robin in a movie. That would be cool.
Right, Brad, do you have any comics to recommend?
Bradley.
Yeah. The one thing that, because as somebody who has cosplayed Black Panther, and not only that, as someone who's cosplayed Black Panther, but as someone who was also a cancer survivor. So Chadwick's death kind of hit me a little different, knowing that for 4 years, this dude was making these ridiculously dope Black movies for 4 years, all while suffering stage 4 colon cancer. Like that. I think that I focus on stuff like that. I think that I always try to tell people that's what you have to focus on. Here is this dude that was Black Panther in real life and in a movie. Like, this was a dude. There is no stronger superhero actor, as far as I'm concerned, than Chadwick Boseman. And what I have to try to remind people sometimes is you have to remember that these people do these things for a legacy. If there's one thing, especially when it comes to men, say it, call it ego, call it whatever you want. If there's one thing men care about, it's leaving a legacy. That is one thing we care about. It's why we like having boys, Trinity, is because we like leaving a legacy. We like our last names going on even after we die. That means the most to me, is like that I have a son. Like, that means the most to me, is he can carry that on. And it's just important to remember, it's like, yes, Chadwick passed. It's very sad. But imagine look at what he's left behind. That is what you think about. We're gonna be talking about this dude forever. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I actually, one of my friends had made a point that like the closest that you know our previous generations, especially of white people, can connect to was Christopher Reeves and the tragedy when he first got paralyzed, and you know, everything that came after that, and his struggle to keep pushing and keep acting, keep being positive, and keep sending a message of being a hero in spite of the trials and everything, you know. And you know, so when he died, it hit a lot of people, especially from like those generations, like really hard, you know. I know when Carrie Fisher died, a lot of people and a lot of friends and a lot of, you know, because of those same kind of things, you know, that not just the character that she portrayed, but the strength that she showed of character outside of the movies. And I think that's kind of how exactly like you said, he's going to be remembered for both. For a long time.
Yeah, and I think that's what people have to just remember sometimes. Like, it's definitely okay to be sad. I literally was in tears. I could not stop sharing interviews from this dude for like 2 days straight. But it's like I was sharing these because it's like, look at what a good human this guy was. And this is what people should focus on. It's like he passed, but it's like, that's what I want people to do at my funeral. You better not cry. I want you to take that time and remember every awesome time I made you laugh. Think about every great thing that we did. That is what I want you to do. And I think about that stuff and I go, that's what Chad would want us to do. There is no fiber in his being where he would want me to sit here and cry every dang day. Like, that's not what he would want. He would want me to say, what did Black Panther mean to you? What did that do for the comic book industry? What did that do for you to get your mom into it? How was it like seeing your son go Wakanda forever for the first time? Like, that's the stuff that kind of drives me and keeps me going whenever celebrities that I really care about pass. It's just, but look what they left behind. And that is what he would want, and that is what I would tell people. And furthermore, we now have solidified proof Black folk are profitable in the comic book industry. This ain't going nowhere. Spider-Man continues to hold records. Black Panther continues to hold records. Luke Cage, people talked about that for the life, and Netflix was like, oh, okay, so we can do these obscure comics and cross them over and give you all of these funny, cool things. Like, that's done now. Like, we got this. There's so much more that's about to come. You guys have no idea. And I think that that's just what people should just look forward to. Like, what's next? Like, that's awesome. That curiosity is awesome. Like, what's next? Because Black Panther was what was next. Like, that was different. The Into the Spider-Verse was this surprise hit that nobody expected, you know, and it's just, look forward to that, you know, and that's.
I'm looking forward to Falcon and Winter Soldier so hard.
I know.
It's just like the delay on that is like gut wrenching.
COVID.
And a good thing to pass on to people, because it's like I said, for a while I felt very alone until I started, especially with Black Panther and all these things coming back. Like, we just found, all of us just started finding each other, and we were all like, you're into this too? And it's like, yeah. So it's like, for people who are like just getting into this, or they're like, what do I say to my kids? What do I do for my kids? It's like, just, we need to let people know, it's like they're not alone. We're gonna find each other. Like, even this, it's like, I hope this brings some people together. And it's like, especially for kids, it's like, we still have Moon Girl, and we still have people like Riri Williams, and it's like, I've seen some cool stuff on like Cartoon Network and all these things for kids. So it's like, this is, it's like you said, we've made it clear that this is not the end for us.
Yeah, it's not the end, and it's not going anywhere. So that's the thing. It's not going anywhere.
It's important to remind your kids that this culture, or subculture as people call us, because they don't believe it's an actual culture.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she's making a good point.
Yeah.
This tribe that we are, when your kids fall into it and they like anime, or they like superheroes, or they want to wear capes, and for like a year, she's 15 now, when she was 9, for a year, she wore a Batman cape, because my husband, he believes he's Batman. I mean, our wedding cake toppers was Batman and Wonder Woman. he believes he's Batman. You can't tell him any different. Don't tell him he's not, because he believes he is. But for a year, she wore a Batman cape. She wore it to school. She wore it out. She wore, I'd have to wash it when she was asleep. You've got to let them know that it's okay. People are going to go, you're a weirdo, you're this, that's not, why do you like this? Comic books are for boys, or, you can't like this because, Wonder Woman's white and you're black, and you're going to hear these things, but you got to let them know, go for it. Love what you love. Just
People thought
stand
Chadwick,
behind,
thought Chadwick
stand
Boseman
behind.
was a weirdo.
Right?
And look
Just,
at him. Look like he's a weirdo. Like, there
I
you
get
go.
told that crazy stuff all the time. Are you crazy? You're too old for cosplay. This is a weird thing. Why do you like to dress up? Like, shouldn't you be doing something else? No, it's a cool thing. It's cool. It's what I like. It's a thing.
Michael B. Jordan even was an anime fan. I mean, yeah, there's a deep, rich vein in history of Black geeks, so it's not a new thing by any means.
Right, and it's like we're all gonna figure everything out again, and whenever those kids finally are at a point where they can ask questions and come to us, now we have the dialogue to actually like give them real answers and be like, here's your stuff. Just, it's like, I know it's hard, but it's like, it's fine, and we've got to be able to keep our blinders on with this backlash. Just,
Hopefully,
they'll find their tribe.
right?
We do need to wrap up, and I am so grateful to have you guys on.
Right.
But,
Thank you so much for doing this with me again.
And yes, and just sharing the positivity and the beauty in it, and hopefully, we're breaking down those boundaries. The way Black Panther did, I mean, that was just like it put a big dent in that, and it's just hopefully it's uphill from here.
Yep.
Or downhill from here, whatever's the better one. But thank you so much. And are we still going? Is Gavin back there to cut us off, or are we just gonna?
Right. I think he's waiting for our signal.
Okay.
This isn't time, so
Yes, but
it's like, yeah, just again, the quick plugs.
Yeah, Bradley, follow me. The Black Speed Gaming, social media, all stuff, Black Speed, or at Bradley Cosplay on Instagram. Check me out.
Perfect. And Trinity?
At Pretty Kraken on Instagram, Facebook. I'm all over the place.
and she's
Everywhere.
gorgeous every time. I don't even know how it is. I've never seen you in a bad picture.
So
And
gorgeous.
that's not a bad Sophie in existence.
Show your ride.
I know.
It's like, and I appreciate all of our people again joining us for this big special edition of Red Web, and it's like,
Yeah.
get ready for the next season because it's going to be exciting.
Yes. And hopefully maybe we can have you on for some other topics. I'll shoot y'all a message. But thank you again for coming. And that's it for Red Web. And so we'll see y'all next time.
Right? Bye, y'all.
Thank you guys.
Maybe. Are we cut? There we go.
You keep thanking them and you're just starting the process all over again.
We're trying to not. We're waiting to get